Welcome back, guys. We are still in spooky season, so of course I have another Halloween creepy type craft for you today. But before we get started with that, I just wanted to thank each and every one of you who are watching my videos and leaving me comments and giving me a thumbs up. It is so important to me and it means the world to me. We just hit 500 subscribers, which if you've been on my channel for a while now, you know that means we are going to have a giveaway. I plan to put that information in next Tuesday's video, so just keep an eye out for that. If you want to kind of follow along so you don't forget, you can go ahead and head over to my Facebook page, which is just Crafting with Candace, and in the description below. If you're new here, thank you and welcome. Consider joining our crafting community by hitting the subscribe button. That way you're always a part of it and seeing what else I have going on. I love hearing from you guys, so give me some comments below on how you feel about this craft as we're going through it at the end, whatever you guys are thinking, and let's go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to be walking you through how I made this realistic tombstone, sorry. I had someone reach out to me. She is looking to get her mom a set of 3 realistic looking gravestones, and I was up for the challenge. So she sent me a picture of just one that was kind of their inspiration, and I took that and kind of ran with it. Now I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to go about making this, so I kind of went through a couple different ideas, chatted back and forth with her about what exactly it is she was looking for, and then, as most of my people do, they hand over the creative side to me and just kind of let me run. So I did some research on what I wanted to do, and I did come across a video by Oak Props, and that video was super helpful. It's kind of what inspired what I did in my process. I watched their video, well, I kind of skipped through it, got a general idea of how they did it, and then I just went from there. So to begin, I went and picked up some of this crafting foam. I think it's called Foamular or Foamula. And it is 1 inch thick and it's a 2x2. I wanted mine to be 2 inches wide and thick. That way it was a little more sturdy. So I got 2 for each tombstone. So I'm doing a set of 3. So I grabbed that. I happen to have at home already these like aluminum nails. My boyfriend pulled them out from a project on the house that he had them left over. So that's what I'm going to use as my stakes. And then I also picked up some of the Loctite 300 PL, or sorry, PL 300. And this is made specifically for Foamboard. So I'm hoping that this is going to be the adhesive that works to attach those 2 pieces together and make them really sturdy. That is the first process, and so my suggestion to you is, if you aren't able to find a 2 inch thick like I was not, to prep for this step ahead of time. This takes 24 hours of cure time, and it needs every bit of that. If you try to take it apart before then, it is not going to adhere, especially if you have any cooler weather going on. So that's what I did. I laid my first piece down. I took my 2 nails, or my 2 stakes, I kind of pushed them into the foam board, and then I put the other board on top and pushed that down to kind of indent so that the nail would kind of sit into each piece to where they would still both sit flush onto each other. So I hope that makes sense. I inlaid them, and then I took the adhesive, I went around the edges really well, and I just covered the entire board as much as I could, to the point of hand cramps, to make sure that I had plenty of adhesive on there, because the last thing I want these things to do is to just come apart. So I clamped those down, I set heavy stuff on them and made sure that they were laying flat, and I left those for 24 hours. Now, the next part of it is the fun part of getting to decide what shape you want the tombstones to be. So I looked at some images on Google to kind of get an idea, but then I just freehanded what I wanted it to do. Now, what I did with this is I just took a large piece of paper. It's from a big old sketch pad that I have, or you could use a piece of poster board, something that's going to give you the size that you want. And then I just laid it on 1/2 of it, and then I drew out what I wanted my tombstone shape to be. And then I traced that onto the foam, and then I just flipped it over to the other side and traced it again. That way I know that the two sides are going to be exactly the same. It's the easiest way that I think that you can do it. And so then I was ready to carve. Now to carve it, I'm going to be using a big serrated knife that I have from my kitchen, a box cutter, and a like small hacksaw. So for this, I'm just going to try to follow the lines as best I can. I score it with the box cutter, and then I come back in with the serrated knife and the hacksaw, and I just kind of go at it. I didn't have my desk mask on at first. You definitely want one. I was underestimating how much of that foam would start kicking up into the air. So make sure that you have something, use protection, even if it's, you know, just one of the cheap little masks, anything to protect yourself, because you don't really want to be sucking that foam into your lungs. So carve it out. What I did was just a little bit at a time, so you know my saw would only go so far, then I'd have to, you know, come back down the other way, take that chunk off, go again, and some points where I couldn't get my saw in, I had to use the knife just to get it started, but it definitely was easier with the saw. They do make a special type of like foam cutter, but I'm very big on use what you have. So look around your house, see if you have that. If not, and you need to go purchase something, then at that time I think that would be appropriate. Don't worry about the rough edges that it's leaving. We're going to address that after we've carved them out, but also the goal is to make these look like realistic tombstones. So that concrete, old, kind of falling apart, crumbly concrete. So carve it all out, and then I don't know what the name of this is, but it's like mesh sandpaper basically. It's for the like construction when you're doing drywall and stuff and you have those big heavy patches to take over. You just run it up and down and it sands it away. That way you can go back in with your finer sandpaper. I don't know what it's called. It's just a piece of like plastic metalish mesh. So that's what I'm using to sand down the sides of my tombstone. So I just take it and I'm just raking it around, getting all that big chunks of styrofoam that are still there, using it to kind of shape the areas that need a little bit more shape, coming back in with my knife if it's kind of not even. I don't know if it's better if at the beginning you can take both of your pieces and carve them separately and then adhere them together. I did this and in my head thought that it would be better because then my cuts will match up perfectly because they're already together. Now, whenever I did this, after I got it all sanded down and everything, I had to go back and put more adhesive in there and let it sit again. This takes up a lot of time, obviously, because I said it's 24 hours, but it's a necessary step because I had sealed my edges really, really well, but then I carved those edges off. So one thing you can do to avoid this is to not carve in that far. So I did do 3 different styles of my tombstone, and on the one I didn't have to go back with any of it because I didn't carve away those edges that I had sealed really well. But on the other 2 I did have to go back and seal them again because of how far it's carved in and how that I took that like nice good edge that I had sealed off really well and carved it off. So that's just kind of a tip for you. I think it was worth it to have the shapes that I did because I wanted 3 different shapes. I wanted them to still be a good size, but I wanted them to be different. So yeah, after I took that mesh and kind of sanded it down, I took it on the edges of the face of it and on the back and kind of scraped the edges on that too to soften those edges a little bit. You don't want those crisp hard edges if it's supposed to be a tombstone that's really old. So that's how I did that. I just took it. If you don't have one of those sandpaper, like a rough grit sandpaper would probably work, but this is what I think would work best for the situation. So yeah, after I took that and shaped it down and got it all together, and then for the ones that I needed to re-adhere them, and I did the same thing, clamped them up, set them flat, put them off to the side. Because of that, I'm only going to have one of the tombstones done for this video, but I didn't want to delay my video or rush the others So I just let it go. You kind of see the shapes and their sayings and what it's gonna be without me having to completely finish them, and you'll kind of get the gist. So moving forward, we've carved, we've re-adhered where we need to, we've shaped it down, we've got everything we need, and we are ready to add our wording. So that means if we want to have a phrase on there, if we want to have a picture on there, the names, the dates, all of that. So I, again, talked to the person I'm doing this for and kind of gave her some ideas of what I thought would be funny, because I'm very big into puns and that type of thing, and set several over, and we agreed on 2, and then on the third one, it's from the original inspiration she sent me from what her mom wanted. So we settled on Buried Alive, so Buried Alive, and Die and Rot. And then on the other one, it says, Here lies the last dog that pooped in my yard. So the dates are all kind of fun too. They kind of play into people's birth dates and things for who she's having them for, other than their death date, because that's very sad and weird and no thank you. But then this is going to be a Christmas present for her, so she is putting the Christmas date on the dog one, just kind of playing around with all of that. So make sure you have fun with it. There are so many different ways to play on the words to make it kind of all fit what you're doing. So what I did is I went on my Cricut, I designed how I wanted it to look, I sized it to how I wanted to. I did, if you're going to do this, you have to have your 24-inch mat, or else you're not going to be able to get it big enough to look the way that you want it to. And then you also need to cut it out in parts. So for this, you want to make a stencil. I used contact paper. So I had ordered these rolls of contact paper for a filing cabinet that I wanted to cover up several months ago. And I accidentally ordered 2, and they're huge rolls. But then I decided I didn't like that, and it didn't look good, and so I have these left over, and I was like, well, if I could just get this to work, it would save a lot of money because the contact paper is much cheaper than vinyl or the stencil vinyl. So I used the washi paper setting on my Cricut, and it cut it out beautifully, and I didn't have any issues with it at all. So if you're new to Cricut and looking to save a little bit of money whenever you go to make stencils, this worked great for me. Now, I know every machine a little bit different. If your blade is a little bit more worn or a little bit more sharp, it might cut all the way through, like all these different things. But I am telling you, this is what worked for me, and it worked great. So after I got them all cut out, I reverse weeded. So usually, you keep the letters and the image. For this one, because it's a stencil, you want to remove all of the letters. For my instance, I want to remove the tree, the dog, and those things, and just be left with the outline of all of that. I took my transfer tape, put it all on there. Another tip, if you're new to this or you don't know, you can reuse your transfer tape. But also, if you don't have a piece that's big enough for what you're working on, you can layer it on itself. So I have a bunch of little blocks, and I didn't want to take and mess with my brand new transfer tape, especially because I didn't want the new sticky to mess with the contact paper because it's so thin, and I was scared that it wouldn't come off. So I took it and I just kind of laid one down and then overlapped it a little bit, and I did that until it was big enough to the size I need, and it works just fine as if it were one. So that's another little tip. If you don't have something that size, just make it work. Took that, I kind of measured out to try to make sure I have it centered, placed it down, got all the bubbles and everything out, and then I was ready to transfer it all onto my tombstone. So my plan was to paint it on. You could spray paint it, whatever. I was outside in the garage and feeling lazy, and my Sharpie was sitting right there. So I just took it and started outlining all the letters. And then I was like, this is stupid. And I just kind of started shading it really quick. So I got it done really quick with no problem. And basically all you need is a general outline to follow, so that you can move on to the next step. So after you remove it all, peel it back all off, clean up your mess, and then that's when we're gonna get out the Dremel. So thankfully my boyfriend has a Dremel and all of the different adaptive heads and things that you need for it. So for this one, we're gonna kind of have like a handheld router. So I don't know if it comes with all Dremels, but his did have it. It's just this black casing that goes around the bit, and it will stop it to where your bit just sticks out a little bit and lays flat. That way it will cut only a certain depth, and it helps you control it and kind of like slide it around on whatever surface it is that you're cutting into. Now, in the video from the Van Oak props that I watched, he used it looks like a tiny drill bit, and I had these ones in there and it said on there that it was for engraving, and I was like, well, why don't I just try that instead? So that's what I did. I got it all adjusted. I set it to where the depth that I kind of wanted it or felt like it would look good. Got it all set up. I did use he has a battery powered one and one that you plug in. I used the one that you plug in because this does take a long time, and I don't want to use one or not plan ahead and your battery die on you. So that's just what I chose to do. So I started and I practiced on a little piece that I kept, a scrap piece from what I carved out, just to kind of see what was going to happen because I've never done anything like this before. And then I thought I was ready, so I started on the bigger letters first. Now what I found is if you kind of tip it to where the edge of the casing is there, and then you kind of just lay it down to where the bit is in the letter, like right in the middle, that kind of helps it stay steady and gets it to where you need it to be. And then you're just going to glide around and take out all of the marker area or the paint area of the letter. Now, with this bit that I did use, it did not work. I think what was happening is that it didn't have enough airflow coming in to cool it down, so it was just melting the foam, and it was just wrapping around. It was giving me rough edges. It was just a kind of a disaster. So I went and grabbed the little bit that looks like a little drill bit. I was worried because it's so long, which is kind of why I didn't use it to begin with, but all I did was just kind of push it in a little further than you typically would, and then extended the head out, and it ended up working out. And I think that gave enough airflow to keep it cool to where it wasn't melting the foam and it wasn't just wrapping around the tip. So this ended up working great, and it was beautiful. So once I got the hang of it, I just took my time going. I'm not going to tell you that my hand wasn't cramping or that my arm didn't get tired, because it definitely did, but I love this technique. It looks so good. I did go back and kind of try to fix the letters that I had messed up on. It is difficult. If I could go back thinking ahead, I would have used slightly different or larger letters for where it says died and born. Because those little details on the end kind of got lost, but I was able to just kind of make it work. But yeah, this was super satisfying. I don't even know. It's just I really enjoyed it. So basically I would trace each letter, and then I would go through and kind of hit any parts of the middle if it had any foam left over. I did it with the trees and stuff. I really thoroughly enjoyed that process. It was kind of relaxing to me, but also, like I said, very satisfying. You also need to make sure that you still have some kind of protector on, of some type of mask, because it does kick up a lot of that foam. And you want to get close to it, so there's like little windows in that casing so that you can see where you're at. So you're down in it. You want to make sure you're protecting yourself. Okay, if you hear any little noises in the background, it's bedtime for my daughter, and she is protesting a little bit, but we'll just ignore that. We just let her figure that out herself. She'll be asleep within a couple minutes. So, all right. So after we do all of the letters and dates and everything, get it to look good, how we want it to, we have to clean everything up. I suggest having a shop vac nearby because it is messy. So I got all of that cleaned up. I wiped down the foam board, and then we're ready to paint. So what I did is I just went to my closest hardware store. We have a Menards here. I don't know if that's everywhere or not, but it's my preferred. And I just went to the paint section and I told them I'm looking to do a project for outdoors. I don't need an expensive paint. I just need an exterior paint that would work well in this color. And I had just kind of picked a grayish tone that I thought would work good. They said, no problem. I just got a little quart of it and we're on. I believe it was a semi-gloss that I got. And then for this, if you don't have some like sand or baking soda or something like that, you might want to pick something up as well. Excuse me. So I do textured paint for a lot of my other stuff that I work on. I did actually plan on using sand this time to make it a little more gritty, but right as I finished cleaning up to mix my paints, it started pouring down rain. So our sand, we have like a sand pit for our pool area, and it all got soaked. So I couldn't put that in my paint or else it'd be watered down and just not ideal. So I just used baking soda. For this, I typically do equal parts. So equal parts of your paint and equal parts of the baking soda. You just mix it in really, really well, and it'll make your paint kind of gritty, and it'll stick really well too, even to really smooth surfaces. So sidetrack, like if you have like a glass container or ceramic or anything like that, if you do a layer of this like baking soda stuff, it'll leave it textured, kind of giving it like a concrete look, which is obviously perfect for this craft. But then you get on your first layer, and then on your second layer you can do it again and kind of make it look really good. It works great. It's a really great hack. So that's my little tip for you. But that's what I did for the Tombstone. I just mixed up equal parts baking soda, equal parts of my exterior paint, mixed it up together and painted the entire front, sides, and then the back at a different time. And before it dried, so once I got a good coat on everything, I took my chip brush that I was using and I just kind of stippled it all the way all over just to give it a really good texture, so that it's not smooth at all and bumpy and it's messy, and I think it looks really, really good. So for the letters, I went ahead, I took like, I have this color, it's called Pavement. It's just a really dark gray, which I'm actually pretty sure I ended up making my own gray in that bottle. So I just took a light gray and black and mixed it up. But basically you just want a really dark gray or a black to give your letters a different tone. So all I did is I took a smaller brush and I just painted all the insides of the letters, because there were like globs of paint in there, which is why I didn't let it dry, because I wanted to make sure that didn't dry like that. I wanted to smooth it out. So it's basically taking my brush, scooping out the big glob, wiping it off, and then just smearing and blending it all in together with the other paint that I was using. And I just did that, and I didn't worry about being messy because it would be easier to go back and clean up, and save me a little bit more time to just wipe over it again than it would to just really methodically sit there and do it, because I don't have patience. So I just covered all of that really well. Once it was dry or a little drier, I kind of checked it again, went in there in any spots I missed or that maybe got too light with the wet paint that was in there. And then once that was done and actually dry, and then the whole surface was dry, I went back and played cleanup. So what I did is just mix up a little bit more of that paint, took a smaller brush this time, and just covered, worked on the edges carefully so that I didn't get that paint into the grooves of the letters and stuff again, and cleaned it all up to where it all looked pretty seamless, that the letters were engraved in that color and then the color of the concrete on the outside, and then I let that dry completely. The next step is to, I just use acrylic paints, but take it outside, or if you're good on the surface you're using, but you want it to stand up. What we're going to do is we're attempting to mimic the just years of aging from rain and just debris and dirt and stuff that would go onto the tombstone. So right now it's just too pretty. So I took this really dark brown that I have. I took this like greenish tone, which I didn't use much of. I didn't really like it. And then I did black, which was basically like a darker gray. And I put the tones onto the tombstone using a spray bottle. So basically I did water and I just dropped paint in there until I was happy with the color, shook it up really good, and then sprayed it on. Now, as you can see, my bottle was too cheap and it broke. I don't know if it's clogged or what, but the plunger wouldn't come back out. So I was having some problems with it, but you basically want to spritz the entire thing really well. The more layers you do, the more it kind of looks realistic, because you know, over time, it's layers of rain and dirt, layers of rain and dirt, layers of rain and dirt that just kind of all build up on there. So that's what we have going on here. So I want to make sure I get it good all over the top, the sides, the back, and the front, because if you think somebody's going to put this in their yard, people can see the back, but you don't have to work as hard on the back. So just make sure you're hitting all of it. Make sure you're getting good into those grooves, the letters. I didn't mention it, but you can see where I took the box cutter and kind of cut like a crack in there to where it looks like the concrete's cracking. Make sure you get it in there to make look like the dirt's kind of packed in. And then once you're satisfied, you know, you do the colors that you've chosen. Then you want to, while it's wet, take a blowtorch, and you're just very lightly, and you can practice beforehand if you want or not, kind of whatever you want. I don't know if I would do it again before I paint. Like, if I don't know if next time I do it, if I would still do it after I painted everything, or if I would just do it before. I didn't try it on just the plain foam. My thought process with this was that I wanted the paint to kind of provide a protective layer so that if I got crazy, it didn't just like perish. So I don't know, if I still have the other two to finish, so I don't know if I'm going to do it the exact same way or if I'm going to do the blowtorch part first. If you do it first, just take water and mist it. You want the entire surface to be wet. That way it doesn't just light up and ignite on you. So if you do it before you paint, wet the entire surface and do it. I would do it after you've engraved everything. So after you've done the routing and engraving, mist everything, make sure it's nice and wet, and then take your blowtorch over it just in the areas that you want. Remember that the edges will age the fastest first. So you can see me while it was wet with just the paint and stuff I sprayed on, I did like the edges of it on the parts where I felt like it looked too new or too straight. A little bit on the surface, just kind of wherever I felt like it needed to. And what I did is I just like slowly, like kind of swiftly was moving over the surface and just getting a little closer until I could see that the foam was starting to heat up, and then I'd pull it away real quick because that heat's going to kind of stay and be there for a minute. So it's better, less is more with this 100%. So you can always go touch it again if you want a little bit more of that bubble up of the foam to make it look like that old concrete, but you can't take it away. So like I said, less is more. Just do it a little bit at a time and add more at where you think you need it. And then, so yeah, the problem with this is that obviously you can see that the pink came back through. I had to go back and paint it, which isn't a huge deal. The issue is I did age it. So now I have to try to match those new spots to what I've already aged. So I just took my paint that I had. I didn't even put the baking soda in this time because obviously the foam itself is what's textured. I just hit all those spots to cover all the pink, took my bottle with those same colors, sprayed over it, and it did not look very good. So those spots still looked a lot newer. I took just one of those like natural sponges, filled it full of water to where it was pretty wet. I wrung it out a little bit, and then I dipped it in the color of paint that I was spraying on there, and I touched all of those spots to really dirty them up and kind of like blend them in and blend them out. Took more of the spray bottle, sprayed it on there to kind of mesh it all together with that brown, and then I didn't like how brown it was, so I put some of the black back in the bottle, shook it up, and did the gray. And at this point my bottle was completely broken, so I just took it and literally dumped it across the top. And I don't think I filmed this part because I was filming two videos at the same time, and I think my phone was still on the other side, but I literally just took the bottle and dumped it over and let it run down as if it, naturally would. And then if I thought it was too streaky in spots from that, then I just took that sponge and just touched it a little bit to take those really harsh streaks away. And I think it turned out amazing. Please let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this. I am so proud of this project. I am very proud of myself for this project because it was a little bit outside my comfort zone. I've never done anything like this before. It was definitely a learning process, but I am so excited for the new skills that I've learned, the new different techniques that I've learned. I'm so excited to be sharing them with you. But I love this project. I can't wait to finish the other two. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say thank you so much for joining me on this. I really appreciate you guys being here. Again, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I love to hear from you in the comments. So leave me a message, even if it's just saying hey. If you're new, think about subscribing and joining us. And if you're, one of my originals, thank you guys so much for continuing to support me and just encourage me to move forward. I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to take you guys in for a closer look. I will see you next time.